We are live. It's the Live Drive Jive Archive with your host, Frank Monday. Teleporting into your radio from across vast distances of time and space with the miraculous Black Mirror. Ooh. Welcome to the show. Good evening, good afternoon, or good morning, wherever you may be. Once again, live from the central capital of the Celestial Dragon, Kingdom of the Celestial Dragon. My last transmission got cut off by an incoming call. It was my children begging me for food, and I'm like, it's 1 o'clock in the afternoon. What's your mother doing? Why does she not cook for you? And my son said, 'cause she's lazy. And I was like, yeah, that's right. You know that, huh? She is lazy. Well, it's hard work thinking up meals and cooking all the time. I have cooked since I got off for vacation. My wife has thought it's just fucking party time. You know, daddy's home, the babysitter's home. The house cleaner's home, you know, time for me to get my ass up in gear and go party with my friends. So I have cooked like the last 8 or 9 meals home, like breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and then breakfast, lunch. And I was like, fuck it, I ain't cooking no more. So we went out for pizza last night, and then breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And it's like, fuck. She's got a good life, man. 90% of the time, she can just go play. Kids are in school, husband's at work, bank account full of money, fucking party time. I wish it was that easy for me, man. I would, if I had it that fucking good, I would be super respectful of my partner and be like, you know, keeping the house all nice and clean and organized and giving back rubs and shit. I would imagine. But what can you do? You can talk about karma. You say, oh, it's karma. You must have done something in a past life. And I'm like, nah, it's not karma. It's just an asshole. She's an asshole. Didn't do nothing in a past life. I mean, I did shit in past lives, but I don't have no negative karma, because there isn't any karma. The Magi lives above and beyond karma. I do so much virtue throughout the day, every day, that the first couple years of my life and just my living standard throughout my life has already broken through any karma. The only karma I got is good karma. But it will be some, I think virtue, see, I talked about this with a friend the other day. And sometimes people will doubt their path and be like, well, why? Why is this thing or the other thing? And I'm going through this, that, or the other thing. And it can be hard. And I agree with you, it can be hard. But the one thing that truly functions in life is virtue. Now, Lao Tzu writes about this. And he says in the Tao Te Ching. So Tao means way. De means virtue. And by virtue, he talks about virtue much like a plant's virtue, the virtues we think of a plant. Like a wonderful, medicinal herb that smells wonderful when it flowers and has a healthful effect on the human body when you make it into tea, and drives away mosquitoes and vermin, doesn't get infected with insects, this kind of thing. those are the virtues of the plant. That's a plant's virtue. And fish have their own virtue too, depending on if they grow up in shallow water or fresh water or salt water or deep water, dark water, fast moving water, as opposed to like a stable, inert body of water. All of these different kinds of fish will have their virtues. So the virtue of a fish could be like its size and shape, its color, the way it hunts, how it behaves, its intelligence, so on and so forth. So the virtue of a human is the same way. Beautiful people have a beautiful aura. They work hard, they connect easily with other people of cultivation. And then the opposite is true too. Assholes stink. They stink like shit. Nobody wants to be around them. They generate a dark, miasmic aura. Flies and shit will land on their face. And even a well-spoken asshole is still, that fly is going to land right on the third eye when they're giving a really important speech, you know, and they won't even notice it. We saw that happen recently with that charlatan. You know who I'm talking about. So people can sometimes hide it, and they can oftentimes hide it from the masses through clever rhetoric and manipulation of the facial features. No, it's not facial features. It's the gesticulations of the face, expressions. So they can master all the right expressions, and they still stink like shit. And someone of deeper cultivation will perceive that immediately. Like me, for example, I walk right past the gate guards. They don't even look at my paperwork or anything. They don't ask me questions. And it's because of the virtue of the mage. I'm above their level. I'm also humble about it. And I've occasionally gotten into a tussle with them. And they never imprisoned me or murdered me. Now some people will say, that's because you got white privilege. You're white. And I'm like, motherfuckers, they've cuffed and beat me to near death like any other person that gets caught in the midst of dark occult operations. And sometimes police brutality. I've been a victim of police brutality for actually being white. So don't give me that fucking bullshit. I've tried a little bit. I think Frater Marlowe said it best. He's like, fuck critical race theory. Don't even waste your time on it. And I thought, yeah, but I needed to find out what it was. So I did a little research, and I've heard a few commentators speak about it. And I've endeavored to learn something about it. And it is total fucking BS. What do they call them? Cotton picking skyscrapers. The folks of critical race theory are trying to present the idea that the skyscrapers in New York were cotton picking slaves. And now here's where I disagree a little bit. They were built by the white Irish, and a lot of Italians worked on those construction crews too. I've seen the old-timey pics, and black folks too. What y'all don't realize is at the start of at like the middle of the 18th century. Like I guess it must have been sometime after the Civil War, but like at the start of the 20th century, blacks and whites were, especially the Irish, the white Irish, they were fully integrated. Like I watched a black dude, I watched an old 1905 or something film of city life, and like everyone was on an equal footing and level. And I watched like this pitch black guy walking among an entire throng of white folks, and he had a white buddy, and they were all like working class folks. And this was on a black and white film. This is legitimate film stuff, and it was just of real life, like tons of folks just filing through Ellis Island or whatever, like New York City. And this black dude was so fully integrated with all these white folks that you couldn't tell that he was any different other than him being black. He was fully accepted as one of the lot, and there were a few black folks cruising around with the white folks, and I was like, I could tell that there was zero racism in any of these people. The black dude obviously knew that there was zero racism. The white dudes were all like, he had like a white boyfriend with him, and he was like walking through, and they were all just fucking loving each other, smiling and walking around. I mean, they weren't smiling, they're fucking smoking cigars and wearing top hats and carrying 6-shooters. But the level of integration was so obvious that there was no racism anywhere. And I'm like, there has to be more historical documentation of that era where all these cats were just living together, friendly and friends and shit, and that this so-called other BS, they dreamt it up, and there's got to be some sort of conspiracy there. I mean, I'm not denying the Holocaust, and I'm not denying the chain gangs or whatever, because they still have them today. But I'm suspicious that there was some culture and society of integration where, I mean, they try to paint a picture like every white folk you met was running around trying to lynch black folks, and it just wasn't true. Those lynching groups, the KKK, were like the Democrats and organized government guys, G-men. Your average individual didn't even know if you were white or black. Like, I remember when I was a little boy and we had a couple of black dudes in the neighborhood, and like a little black boy came by one time and he's like, blah, 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 blah. And he's like, but I'm black. And I'm like, what do you mean? And he's like, can't you see my skin color is black? And he's like a personality now. He lives in LA. Vicelis Shannon. If you watch any of my live drive jobs, I'm talking about you, brother. And I was like, I didn't even understand what he meant. I was like 4 or 5 years old. And he's got like fried chicken in one hand and watermelon in the other. And he's like, blah, blah, blah. I'm going to church with y'all white folk. And I'm like, what are you talking about, white folk? I'm pink. And I didn't understand any of it. Then as a little white boy, I wandered into a black neighborhood, and they like, what you doing in this neighborhood, boy? And I'm like, I don't know, I'm just cruising around. And they're like, you can't be here. You get killed. And I'm like, why? And they're like, you're white. And I'm like, there's that bullshit again. What the fuck you talking about? Y'all some brainwashed motherfuckers. So I grew up with a big heart of naivety and openness and genuine sincerity. And it was other people perpetrating that bullshit. And it is bullshit. Color distinction does not separate me from other people. And colors aren't races anyway. I'm Caucasian, Asian. So, a Caucasiatic, Levantine, Negroid, and Mongoloid. Those are the distinctions. But I got attacked all the time for being white. by black folk because I was white and I was in the wrong neighborhood. I remember when I was in the 7th grade and I was going to, was that school called Bancroft? I went to Hoover, but they kicked me out of Hoover because I didn't want to fucking wear no Dove shorts and run around the track looking like a fag. Because I grew up being taught that being a fag was no good. And so I had skinny little white legs and they wanted to put me in like gay little shorts. And I'm like, can't I just wear board shorts for PE? And then you gotta wear the Dove shorts. You gotta wear a uniform. You gotta suit up, take a shower, naked kid. I was like, fuck all that. So I got switched to Bancroft, and there was a Mexican girl there in like one of my classes, and good God was she beautiful. And I fell in love with her, and I wanted to date her, and she liked me. And I went over to her house, and her father told me directly, he's like, you can't date my daughter. And I'm like, why? And he's like, because you're white. And I'm like, what the fuck does that matter? What are you talking about? That's like the 1000th time I've heard that shit. And he's like, nah, you won't fit in with our culture, man. And like, her brothers will beat you up. And I was like, huh, all right. So anti-white racism is a real thing. I mean, call it bigotry, call it prejudice, call it whatever you want. But we were a middle-class family, and I don't know how many fucking times I heard about being white and being discriminated against for being white. I mean, literally in the thousands. Well, hundreds of times anyway. Maybe thousands, I don't know. You figure if it happens a couple of times a week, then, and like it affects your, I'm walking, I couldn't just really walk through black Mexican neighborhoods. I would have been murdered. But I never saw a black folk, you know, get murdered in my neighborhood or even be harassed. You know, just walk on through, who cares? I mean, hanging out trying to date our daughters or something might have been different, I don't know. If you went to school together, it never mattered. It just doesn't make any fucking sense to me. And so educators and social engineers, they came up with those ideas. Those are not inherent to our civilizations. They have to be programmed in. And not only that, they have to be programmed in on a religious basis, consistently talked about and repeated over and over again on TV and literature, in the school systems. So, in one generation, they inbred anti-immigrant, anti-black, or whatever racism into a certain group of people. Now they're doing it in the opposite direction. They're doing the same thing. They're breeding anti-white. They're indoctrinating anti-white racism into people all over the fucking place. Blows my mind. Never stops. It's like an insidious mimetic agent has infected certain groups of people. And it's like maybe the structural organization of the institutions gives birth to these mimetic viruses that infect people. I'll have to do more research on that. I love y'all good looking, sexy, happy fucking people out in TV land. I will see you next time. Bye for now.